Hello and Happy New Year. I'm Anthony Furey, filling in for Ezra. Thank you so much for joining us. It's time for a 2014 recap, and I've got 3 stories to talk to you about that I think should be getting a lot more attention than they are. 3 stories that could cause big trouble if left unattended. For starters, we are turning into Planet of the Apes. Animals are taking over. What? Seriously, Fury, you gotta be kidding me. This can't be a real one. Yes, it is. Hear me out. Earlier this year in the United States, activists pushed to give chimps personhood. They were challenging this in court, meaning animals could then sue human beings. Total madness. A Humane Society bylaw officer here in Ontario with delegated policing authorities, they can lay fines against you for not brushing your dog's teeth. Yes, it's true. That's already happened. And it could happen again, and it could get worse. In Toronto, a city planner wants it mandatory that all new condos have doggy care facilities in it. And in Mississauga, effective this year, there's now rules about when you can and can't take your dog outside and for how long. Now look, what is going on here? By all means, you want to protect the animals from abuse. But the fact that we're emphasizing this when there's so much else going on in society, where there's debt crippling things, this is signs of a decadent society. Countries like China and India, they're working on growing their industry, and we are focused on making it legal for chimps to sue us? Madness. Where are our priorities? And if we keep going this way, more decadence. Next story, the crisis in Greece. Part 2. You may not know that there's a new one. Just last week, a snap election was called in Greece, and the Syriza party is leading high in the polls. They are a self-described neo-Marxist party that completely rejects the concept of austerity, or as I call it, living within your means. They want to give out free rent, food, electricity, absolutely everything. They're talking as if austerity was something imposed on them against their will by evil international finance. Ooh. But here's the thing. Greece brought its bankruptcy upon itself. Then they took the biggest bailout in history to keep afloat, and they agreed to the terms. They signed to it. Now sure, there's some short-term pain, but how could there not be after years of living beyond their means? This is entitlement culture gone high octane. Your bad choices push you into bankruptcy, and then you rebel because you don't like how being bankrupt feels? Well, that's your own problem. And everyone should be talking about this story. It should be way bigger than it is because it's a cautionary tale of what could happen over here next. There could be a domino effect, and it would bring everything down. My final offer of most underreported story of the year? Liberal leader Justin Trudeau. What are you talking about, Fury? You've been talking about that guy practically every day. He's on the front pages all the time, getting a lot of press for leader of the third party. Well, no. What I mean is it's a story that isn't getting the right amount of attention. Selecting a prime minister is a very serious affair. It's not a reality TV contest. Yet much of the public and the media, they still, all throughout 2014, they did not ask probing questions of the Liberal leader. He is shockingly inexperienced for the position he currently holds, let alone being prime minister. Roll call. Stéphane Dion, Mike Ignatieff, Bob Rae, all qualified individuals. Although one may quibble with their policy views, way more qualified to be prime minister. Trudeau is not even in the same league as those leaders who came before him. Now sure, many Canadians, they don't like Stephen Harper, fine. But they're confusing their dislike of Harper with a love of Trudeau, and it's not the same thing. If this inexperienced leader with very few policy ideas is not properly vetted, and he becomes prime minister, look, we're going to be in very serious trouble here. Now, very different matters, these 3 things I've said, but all of them point to broader problems in society. Integral stuff, folks, that we got to pay attention to in 2015, or, well, to go Planet of the Apes, we'll be going to the dogs.
Since the Putin regime invaded Ukraine, We have been leading the way in seeking the political and economic isolation of Russia. We've shipped non-lethal military supplies to help the Ukrainian government. We're providing financial assistance, and we've deployed the Canadian Armed Forces to help reassure our NATO allies in Eastern Europe. We will not rest until the people of Ukraine are free to choose their own destiny, free from Russian boots on their soil, free from intimidation. We will never recognize the illegal occupation of Crimea nor any other inch of Ukraine's sovereign territory.
Simon Kent joins us now from London, England. Simon, thank you for joining us. So those were my underreported themes, very different there, but like I said, indicative of broader stuff that's going on, which is why I want us to think about those angles a little bit more. I understand you've got a few narratives that you want us to be chatting more about. Take it away.
Just listen to those fine words just then, talking about Canada's role in the Ukraine. I wish more world leaders would stand up like Stephen Harper and see the world for what it is, rather than the world that they want it to be. Barack Obama, I'm looking at you now. Stephen Harper was very firm all the way along, first with the Crimea and then with the Ukraine, and he pushed very hard to maintain the sovereignty of the Ukraine people. Not only that, he followed it up. Canada has been a great supporter of Ukraine independence. As we know, Canada sent non-lethal weaponry to help the Ukraine fight off and stand up to the Russians. Right now, the Royal Canadian Air Force is providing combat air patrols over the Baltic to reassure NATO states. Canada has such a strong role in Europe, has such a huge amount of respect. I wish people would see that for what it is. Canada having a huge role in world affairs, too underreported because people confuse their hatred of Stephen Harper with they should be having their pride in Canada for standing up for what is right.
Simon, I think you're certainly right. A lot of people say, oh, Canada needs to bring back its standing in the world like it had in the 90s, peacekeeper nation. But we got a huge oomph in a number of different corners of the world right now. And Canada is, I've always said, punching above its weight. What else do you have for us?
Well, I think when you look at around the world, and Stephen Harper is emblematic of a triumph in the Anglosphere of right-wing, very strong right-leaning governments. You look at over here in the UK, you've got David Cameron running a very good economy. Stephen Harper with Canada. Canada has a solid gold economy. Go down the Pacific and you'll see Tony Abbott in Australia, and then across the Tasman Sea, you've got John Key in New Zealand. 4 strong conservative-minded prime ministers running strong economies. And in your monologue at the start, you were talking about Greece. Well, have a look at these economies with very conservative, strong leaders, and they're from the right. They don't believe in spending money for the sake of spending money. They run tough economies, and look at them. They're booming, and people are flooding into countries like Canada, the UK, Australia and New Zealand because they want to be there. They want to be part of that economy and share that wealth rather than just spray it up against the wall like the socialists and the left-leaning governments of people like Francois Hollande in France are doing right now. It's crazy stuff.
You're making me a little nervous, though, Simon, because you're making me think of the 80s when you had Brian Mulroney, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, but then now suddenly government bigger than ever, debt rolls larger than ever. So I'm praying the same outcome does not happen. Your final pitch, sir.
Well, I'd say look down the Pacific again. Look where Canada is looking towards its future. It's not looking here to Europe, to the old world. Canada sees a growing economies in the Pacific and the Pacific Rim. Canada is signing free trade agreements with countries like South Korea. It's talking to China. It's talking to Japan. Go further down the South China Sea. Go down to countries like Malaysia and Indonesia and the Philippines. They're all strong. They're all growing. And Canada has such a great opportunity there. And Canada is being seen in those parts of the world. Canada turns up at APEC and all these regional conferences in Asia to do deals, to get in with these governments and push Canada's interests. And there's nothing wrong with that. Canada is looking away from the old world, looking towards the Pacific, looking to those growing economies and wanting to be part of the economies, because Canada is an export nation. It's an export country. And that is what makes Canada such a strong feature in the world of geopolitics. Good for Canada, and expect to see more of that, because I think Stephen Harper realises the future isn't here in Europe, in the old world. The future is in the growing parts of the Pacific, and Canada's voice is only just being heard, but we'll hear more of it.
Simon, I'm really glad you bring that narrative up, because I've been saying for a while now that people get really incensed. Senate scandal, or the public sector workers, they're marching with the Harper hates me buttons they wear, and sometimes folks see it on the news and go, that's the narrative. But I do think the long-standing narrative, decades away, is going to be the trade deals, because if we can find a way to grow the economy in a way that everyone benefits, the folks in the East Coast, people on First Nations reserves, I mean, you just bring up the GDP for everyone, and we can really share in the wealth, and that's really my hope here for this country. Simon Kent from across the pond. We are out of time, but thank you very much for joining us, and folks, thank you for watching. Do you have any top underreported stories of the year? Anthony.Furey@sunmedia.ca, or tweet me @AnthonyFury. But don't go away. Still lots more source coming.